Yeah, children. Today we are there cash flow statement to learn about the cash flow statement, specifically about the operating activity. Specifically about the operating activity. But before we start with operating activity, what is cash flow statement? Cash flow statement is a statement which explains about the inflows and outflows of the cash from three activities. One is operating activity. Second is investing activity. Third is your financing activity. Financing activity. Let me explain about these three activities. Operating activity. Purely in cash flow statement, we are going to talk about the inflows and outflows of cash and cash equivalents from day-to-day activities. So we are going to exclude, there are certain extraordinary items, there are certain other incomes or other revenues which is being there, which are relating to investing and financing. We are going to exclude, and we are going to basically take inflows and outflows of cash from operating activity. Investing activity. So children, one thing I wanted to know, that when we talk about investing activity, basically I'm talking from trading unit point of view or non-financial companies point of view. So non-financial companies usually require capital. What do they do with that capital? They invest. Where do they invest? On the non-current assets part. Non-current assets part. So basically the investing activity consists of the inflows and outflows of cash, inflows and outflows of cash from the non-current assets. That is investing on tangible assets, intangible assets, and the investments made during the year. That is in the other businesses as well. Now, coming to financing activity. Now, what are my sources of finance? If you talk about non-financial companies, there are two sources of finance which we have. That is owner's fund. That is owner's fund and borrowed fund. Borrowed fund. So specifically when I talk about owner's fund, in case of companies, owners are my equity shareholders, preference shareholders, and then when I talk about borrowed fund, it is my non-current liabilities I'm talking about. Non-current liabilities I'm talking about. That is your loans, comma, your debentures, any borrowings which is beyond 12 months period, that is considered to be my non-current liabilities. So any inflows and outflows relating to this owner's fund and borrowed fund will come in financing activity. Sir, you can tell this as shareholders fund. No sir, we can write shareholders fund entirely goes in financing activity. No, there is one thing called as reserves, which is excluded from shareholders fund. Basically we are talking about equity and preference. No doubt securities premium reserve. Securities premium comes under reserves and surplus. But that reserves will come in financing only. But in simple general reserve is given. Transfer to reserve is given. That reserves is not a part of this financing activity. So that's the reason I cannot take shareholders fund. So shareholders fund is nothing but your equity plus preference plus reserves and surplus. Is it clear? Am I clear? So what is cash flow statement? Finding out the cash inflows and outflows from operating activity, investing activity and financing activity. So what are these? This is the broad outlines I gave. This is from the non-financing company's point of view. Financing company's point of view, the shares, preference shares, the buying of shares, the selling of shares, the interest received, dividend received becomes a part of operating activity. and their investments will be in what? Their investments will be in the equities or whatever they are selling as such. For financing institutions, your financing activity will be considered to be your sources from where you are getting this finance as such. Is it clear? So talking about this three activity, the cash flow statement basically speaks about the inflows and outflows from day-to-day activities purely. So for that we need to exclude. So please keep on watching for the next videos for individual activities I am going to explain.